was taken from us before his time, but for him, he will always remember the happier times, and he will forever live on in our memories and in our hearts. As a family, we would like to thank everybody for all of their thoughts and their prayers during what has been the most difficult and horrendous of times for us.
Well, our reporter Rajiv Popat has been looking back at the night the gang struck.
These are the final moments of Ramniklal Jogiya at his jewellery shop on Belgrave Road in Leicester. He was a man of habit. Every night he left work at around 7:45 and walked the short distance to his home. But on the evening of January the 24th this year, he didn't get to see his family. They were worried because he was never late. A van was parked up close to his house waiting for him. This CCTV footage shows him approaching. Seconds later, Mr. Jogiya is bundled inside. The van speeds off and drives along the Golden Mile past the shop. His horrific journey begins. These are the men who kidnapped Mr. Jogiya: Thomas Jervis, Charles Mcauley and Callan Reeve. While in the van, Mr. Jogiya was tortured for information. They wanted the keys to his shop and the codes that would give them access to his safe. He suffered a savage beating. They thought there was gold and jewellery worth up to £300,000 inside.
They caused several broken ribs. He had a detached bicep on his arm. He had a severe head injury, 27 separate areas of injury across his whole body, which is absolutely terrible.
The trial at Birmingham Crown Court heard that Thomas Jervis, with the keys and codes, entered the shop wearing a burqa with a gun hidden inside. He even had a shopping trolley, thinking he would have plenty of gold to carry out, but the plan went disastrously wrong. A time lock on the safe meant it wouldn't open.
I would say this was a sophisticated and organised group of individuals. They'd gone to the extent of using disguises and avoiding leaving their DNA and fingerprints, a very elaborate setup, and even using what I refer to as closed network mobile phones, a closed circuit, almost a walkie-talkie set of mobile phones between themselves to enable them to commit the crime in private.
Meanwhile, his accomplices were either outside keeping watch in a stolen Ford Fiesta or were driving Mr. Jogiya to Stoughton, where he was dumped in a quiet country lane. Police aren't sure whether Mr. Jogiya was dead by then or whether he was stumbling around in the dark looking for help before falling unconscious. He was all alone. It was a freezing cold night. He was found covered in mud.
What happened in that van, whether it was panic, whether it was cold-hearted, instrumental aggression, as it's called in the literature, that is them using aggression as a means to an end to get that information out of the man, we will not know.
I would describe their actions as callous and senseless. There was absolutely no need to have used this amount of force for what they needed to achieve. And it's led to the death of this 74-year-old man who was a loving family man, father, husband. It is a tragedy, an absolute tragedy.
This was, according to Leicestershire Police, a large and complex operation. Almost 200 officers from across the East Midlands were deployed to work on the case. More than 2,000 exhibits were recovered and 660 statements taken. But it wasn't just the hard work of police that helped to bring the defendants to justice.
The main thing was the community assistance, and I must applaud the community for their help in providing information to the police through Crime Stoppers that helped me to cement the intelligence and police information I'd already got, and that brought things together that enabled me to identify the suspects and arrest them and then bring them to justice.
For Mr. Jogiya's family, the last 6 months have been incredibly painful. They've described him as a gentle soul who was quiet, humble and loved by all.